I know it is a rainy day here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's kind of maybe causing us to go off on a slow start. I don't know if anybody else is feeling that way, but if you do have a win, would love for you to either unmute, put it in the chat. Would love to hear it.
I got a question. A person's hiring process, a lot of the times I go in and I kind of just go off of Craigslist looking for a guy, but I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to look into knowing you have the right guy or knowing you have the right people on site. You don't want to just have any stragglers showing up. What's the person's hiring process like?
Yeah, Philip, and correct me if I'm wrong. I think you're kind of asking not necessarily how to find applicants, but you're asking how do I kind of vet them out to make sure the person I'm hiring is good quality? Is that kind of what you're asking?
Exactly.
Okay. Any advice? I know all of us coaches are probably itching to answer that, but any client advice? What do you do to make sure the person that you're getting ready to hire is a good hire? Or what have you maybe not done in the past that you wish you would have done?
Oh,
So,
there we go, Jay.
So this isn't really my way, but I was watching some videos on some pretty predominant businessmen, and there was one that said anybody that he was thinking about hiring, he would take to this specific restaurant for lunch, and he would notify the manager, because he knew everybody. So he would notify the manager, the hostess, or the server to get the applicant's order wrong so that he could see how the applicant handled the situation, if he got upset, if he was nice, and that sort of thing. So you can kind of see how they handle adversity by just one simple little lunch. Anyway, just thought I'd share.
Yeah, that's interesting. And yeah, if somebody gets really explosive or starts bad mouthing, I guarantee you that anytime they're mad at you as their boss, they're going to be bad mouthing to everybody else around them. So I like that kind of trick. I see Dale with Arnold's Plumbing put call their former employer, which I would have done that in one instance in particular. I don't think that's bad advice. Definitely call references, former employers. What I will say is in most states, you're not really supposed to say much as the former employer. So you might not get a true story. It's just, you're really not supposed to say, legally, you're really not supposed to say much about why you let somebody go. So you just might not get the full story with that, but it's worth doing. You can probably at least, even if they don't tell you the full story, they can probably give you a vibe. You can probably get a good sense of, oh, this guy is reluctant to tell me, which probably means he's not singing his praises. I would also say I'm a big fan of shadow days. And so I would really encourage, saying, hey, I'm going to bring you in. Let's spend a couple hours. I'm going to take you to the job site, see if this is a place that you would want to work. They don't necessarily need to be doing any labor in that shadow day. You're just getting a good sense of, is this somebody who knows what they're talking about? Is this somebody I want to spend time with? Dale, I see you in the chat here. I don't know if you're able to unmute. And I know during a shadow once, I think a applicant who you were thinking of hiring fell asleep in the van. I don't know if you can unmute and tell that story or put it in the chat. But literally, this applicant seemed great, had great experience. They were in the van together going to a job, and this guy just stops talking, and Dale looks over, and he's literally asleep in the middle of their shadow day. And then when Dale wakes him up, he's like, oh, well, yeah, that happens sometimes. And it's like, and I was about to put you in a van? What? And so big fan of shadow days. I think that's a great way to get a good feel for somebody, because in a 30-minute, hour-long interview, it's really hard to get a good idea of, how somebody truly is, what their true colors are. I know Robert last week gave the advice of I'm okay, Dale. You backed it up. That is a true story. I know Robert gave the advice last week of a lot of times when they go to hire somebody, they hire them as a 1099 first on kind of like a trial period, and then once they get past their like 90 days, we have a review, and at that point, you make it an employee. That's a great way to go about it too.
Yep, I think that's pretty common, but in the shorter term, definitely affirm what Nicole's saying about doing that shadow day, because, well, and what I would add to that too is you're going to get a curated version of a person as the owner of the business. There is no way around that. So in that shadow day, putting them with your team does two things. One, they let their hair down a little bit more and you'll see what they're, more actually authentically like. But two, it builds up loyalty and longevity in your current team when they know and believe that they have an impact on the future company. If you take their advice or ask for their advice, even how that stands out to people that are currently with you. And they'll know, well, Jay, what do you got, sir?
Oh, it's not really, it's kind of a funny story.
Okay.
I was actually the shadower. I was being interviewed for a roofing sales position. This was 25 years ago. And there was a hailstorm on one side of town, and I was supposed to meet the sales manager at this gas station at 9:00. And then I was going to ride with him on a few calls and whatnot. He shows up about 10:30. So I sat there for an hour and a half waiting for him. He's filling up his truck with gas. And so I walk over to talk to him, and he reaches in the back of his truck and grabs a beer, cracks it open. And he's like, "Hey, you want one?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no, I'm good." And he's like, "All right, well, you want to jump in the truck and we'll go?" I was like, "No, I'll follow you." And so we got lost on the way to where we were going. And he is backing out of a street. So there's like a T, and he stops in front of me, gets out of his truck, keeps the door open, and pees in the middle of the street. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I think I'm going to go. And so like 2 days later at like this sales meeting, the owner of the company is like, "So Jay, you had your training with, so-and-so, how'd it go?" And I was like, "You really want to know?" Right here in front of everybody? He's like, "Yep." And I told him exactly what happened. And that owner of that company, I ended up working for him for about, 5 or 6 years. And he's still one of my really good friends today. And he's like, "Dude," he's like, "I would have never known if you hadn't shared that information with me." And I'm like, "That's just the way I roll. It's just not going to happen." So.
Oh my gosh. I was thinking you were going to drop the punchline of, "And once I told them it was, then they said, 'All right, that was a test to see if you tell the truth.'"
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That is crazy.
I never saw the guy again, actually.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. One thing in the chat that Dale just put, and I want to emphasize this, is, Dale does do a shadow day, and he still at some point have hired somebody who he's had to end up letting go, and that will happen. Like, people will fool you. It's a little bit nature of the beast. Don't let yourself get emotional over that. People just will disappoint you sometimes. You can have the write-up policies, you can have all of the checks and balances when you go to hire somebody, and they could still turn out to not be the best fit. What I'd really encourage is just don't let the wrong person cause you to lose faith in that role. In having that project manager or having that office person or having that technician. It might take going through a few before you find the right one. And just don't let, people cause you to lose faith in what you're doing or finding that right person. But if you don't have a write-up policy, if you don't have a callback policy, if you don't currently feel like you have a good way of doing that shadow day, talk to your coach. Let's get all those things so that we can do everything we can to try to make sure that the hire you're making is the best hire for you. Any other?
I don't know if there's any secret to building a great team. And what I mean by that is you can develop efficiencies in a hiring process that allow you to vet out people faster. That's going to waste your time. and prioritize people that have a higher percentage likelihood of being the kind of person you're looking for, but it's not guaranteed. And what I'm really trying to say when I say that there's no secret to it is really that just building a team and hiring great people is just kind of one of the harder things in owning a business. And it's hard because it takes time, and we have to go through the minutia. It's like work that we have to do that we don't always know when it's going to produce the result that we want, right? I think as entrepreneurs, we like to stay focused on work that we know is going to produce a result. Okay, if I do more estimates, I know I'm going to close more deals. If I call more leads, I know I'm going to get more appointments. If I complete this job and these projects I have going on, I know I'm going to get paid. But hiring is one of those things where it's like, I'm going to put in this input of work and I don't always know directly what's going to come from it. The only secret is this: if you continue to put those inputs of work, if you continue to run that hiring process like we're talking about, you will find the people that you're looking for. But the only way to find them is to continue looking for them and not to give up until you find them. In our construction company, we have a guy who's like an on-site project manager for us who's just awesome. This dude is like literally like an answer to prayer type of employee. And it took us a lot of, like what I just saw Dale said, bad actors. Took us losing money. We found a guy that we thought we could trust. Turns out that he was stealing for us the entire time, lying about his time, buying stuff on our card from Home Depot for him, right? Not for the projects, all the time. Like, it was bad. And that's painful and it's tough, but after continuing just to look, we found the right guy. And the only way to find the right guy is to put yourself in position of finding him. That's why you just got to do this stuff, so I don't know if that's helpful for anybody, but it just kind of changes the perspective. I mean, look at our team at Redmond Growth. They've heard me say this recently, but I really believe we've always had great people on our team. The bad ones that we've had on our team, you guys don't even know about because they haven't lasted more than 2 or 3 months. But it took us a long time to build the team. The team we have today is the best team that I think we've ever had, and it just took us time. So anyway, it's one of those things that if you're truly looking, first of all, ask yourself, do I need to hire this person? Is there maybe a more efficient way to do this? Most of the time, the answer is probably, if you're in your first year with us, second year with us, most of the time the answer, if you're feeling the need to hire someone, is probably yes, right? And that's just a matter of, okay, I just got to put in the inputs. We've got a couple of efficient processes that don't take a lot of time, that allow you to continue to put, your eye on the ball and continue to keep that prioritized. But in order to build a great team, you just have to keep on forever looking for a great team, and have really high standards, do the things that Nicole's talking about, have policies, be uncompromising in your policies, be, unwavering in them. Hey, here are the standards that we expect. And we get it, it's not for everybody, but this is like the standard that we're going to operate at. It's not going to be a very fun place if you're not that kind of person here. Like, you don't have to be a hard ass about it. You can just be very direct. Like, you're not going to want to work here if you don't really, really, truly value excellence and taking care of people and going above the call of duty whenever you may need. And that doesn't mean you're working all the time. It just means that there may be times where you may have to give that little extra effort, and that's the kind of culture we are. So anyway, I'm kind of rambling now, but I've been thinking a lot about this lately. It's just that there's really no hack to building a great team. Even working with staffing companies, recruiting companies, like, that's just almost a more expensive way to do the process, right? Sometimes those things can work, I'm kind of skeptical of them working for construction businesses long term, especially for more important foreman, project manager, superintendent, estimator, those kind of roles. Anyway, rant over.
Nice.
What other questions do we have today? Thoughts?
Well, I've got a question. Looking for estimating software. I've been looking for free or low cost, just to because I don't want to spend a bunch of money and test to find out something doesn't work. If anybody's got any input, I'm looking at Methvin right now. It's a product that's made out of New Zealand, and looked at some other ones, but I'm looking for something that can be efficient to implement.
Scott,
Great.
if anyone has low cost or free estimation software solutions, throw them in the chat or raise your hand so that you can let Scott know. But I wonder, Scott, if for this period you could do most of the work you're needing to do using like Google Sheets.
That's
That-
what you're currently doing.
Yeah, that's what we're doing now, and we're just swamped. We can't keep up with the estimations on the bids we have.
I got it. Okay, I got it. Well, Jordan, what do you got, buddy? Can we help Scott out?
I don't know exactly what industry you're in, but actually ChatGTP pops out. I mean, I haven't like used it crazy, but I mean, I can literally like talk to text while I'm driving. Hey, we have an EV estimate. The panel's 50 feet away from where the electric car charger is going to be installed. Our labor rate's $125 an hour. Our material markups 90%. Can you please give me an estimate based on national averages? And ChatGTP in like 45 seconds will spit out an estimate that looks very professional.
Yeah, I'm using Grok to do that now, and I've actually written a questionnaire script for it to put it in. But when you're doing a whole house remodel, we're general contractors.
Sure.
So when you're doing a whole house remodel, it's time consuming. It's deep. The prices, you have to go verify them because they're not right, even though they're trying to pull from Lowe's and Home Depot databases, and it's just very, very time consuming the way we have to do it.
For sure.
Scott,
That makes sense.
Part of me is wondering what part of the process is taking a long time, because it sounds like that's just a very large project to estimate. I don't know if there's like a hack, like a faster.
Well,
Because if you're having to verify all the prices anyway, to me that would be the thing that would take the longest time.
yeah, but I guess, Robert, what I'm looking for is an estimating software where we can start to build templates and databases, where you could just bring it in and, where you go, okay, we're building an ADU. It brings everything in, and then we just change the square footage. We may change the bathroom count, that kind of thing. Because right now, let's say we're doing a remodel. We got floors, cabinets, baseboards, and all these things require linear square footage or cabinet count, all that kind of stuff. It's just time consuming. It takes us weeks to kick out a bid.
I know that Lance Odell, he's not on the call right now. This wouldn't be a standalone. It wouldn't be the cheap option either, but House Pro has been putting out recently more of a AI powered ability to put together numbers for quotes. That seems to be on pace with what they were pricing at as well.
How much is using that?
I was trying to look it up.
Scott, part of my recommendation is this. Part of my recommendation isn't to say, hey, use spreadsheets, just because I'm recommending you use spreadsheets. Part of my recommendation is it shouldn't take long for you guys to get to a point where you can get the estimating software that you really want without thinking twice about the price tag. And I would not recommend using a temporary, like cheaper, low-cost solution and invest a lot of time in that solution when in maybe 3 or 4 months from now, you can upgrade to a better solution that still isn't that expensive. We use the Notify software for our estimating. We like it because of its integration with QuickBooks and because it allows me to, as projects are going on, I always know how much profit we're making for each phase of the job. The job costing is so easy. It takes minutes. And I think we pay somewhere around like 300 something bucks a month. I think Builder Trend is a real popular one. A lot of these guys use. I think that's around 800 something. But part of my recommendation is almost to in the long run save you time, because I'd hate for you to invest all this time in customizing a cheaper software solution when in just a few months you can upgrade it, which is why I'm curious if through the combination of some spreadsheets, and I know some guys in here have some great like kind of spreadsheets that you're talking about. That's kind of templated already. I know that I even use a couple spreadsheet tools that we use for a long time that was broken up by core stages of the process, right? So demo, structural framing, electrical rough-in, plumbing rough-in, and it has other cells to fill out the rest of the information. So that's the only thing I'm trying to save you from. I'm trying to save you from, for now, going all in on the software. That's a cheaper solution when you'll be in a position in a few months to be able to purchase something much better. And so beyond that, I don't have any specific like free estimating software solution. That could load you up with a different types of spreadsheets and things.
I think a better question, Scott, and correct me if I'm wrong here, is what could I be doing right now to get estimates back quicker? Because that's Scott's biggest limiting factor is being able to produce estimates in a timely manner. He's losing a lot of appointments because we're not getting estimates back quicker. And I think that's what's prompting him to want to get a software is to try to
right.
do that.
Would you agree, Scott?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's. I'm curious what the rest of the group has to say about that. Can anyone share from their experience, estimates that began to take that took them a long time, maybe steps in the process, even before you sit down to write the estimate, maybe that you take in collecting data from the homeowner, from the first appointment, or is there anyone that can share how they enhance the estimating process?
If I could just interject something, out here in Phoenix, I'm Scott's partner.
Yeah, good to see you.
There are about 32 to 3,500 general contractors in our metropolitan area. So we also want to be competitive. I don't know what other people are doing, and I know it ranges from high end to low end, but when we're doing a software or an estimate, we want to make sure we're crossing all our T's and dotting all our I's, because we want to get the job for one, we want to be competitive for two. And how do you really do that without going through a detailed estimate like we're doing? Scott has put together the Google Sheets and everything with, like you were saying, Robert, with the different stages of construction, demo, flooring, paint, bathroom, all that good stuff. But like he said, it just takes weeks to get this stuff.
Yeah, so there's an element to this that I'm trying to evaluate, which is like, this is like a drastic example, but I think the point will be communicated. It's like, what's the what's the fastest way to estimate a 200 unit multifamily mid-rise? You know what I mean? Like, that's just a huge project, right?
Yeah.
And so for when you increase the complexity of a project, the estimating process just objectively is going to take longer. There's just kind of no way around that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, are there certain tools that you can use to make certain parts of the estimate go faster? Absolutely. I think there is something to AI, right? And it sounds like that you guys have already gone down that road, but maybe there's even more room to explore. And so we want to be able to bid the work that you guys want, that you have right now, that's available, and that you can win. But something else that you may want to consider as we begin focusing on, ramping up your guys' marketing, which is really a first time thing we've done, is if we go after smaller but still well profitable projects, you're going to be able to get estimates out a lot faster, where you're going to be able to win more jobs and get higher revenue in the door, right? So just long-term kind of perspective, something to be thinking about is by just doing the kitchens, by just doing the baths, by just doing the exterior project, right? That's how a lot of these contractors, a lot of our wealth of contractor clients kick out estimates faster, is that they're doing a lot of the same type of work, right? Importance of having a niche. And sometimes in just doing a larger project, it just takes longer to do an estimate. But what part of the process do you guys think is taking the longest?
Well, because again, we don't do a lot of just, kitchen type jobs. So for instance, we got a structural job, and with that, everything has to be, it's individual. It's not something you can template. So, we're taking out, load bearing walls, we're putting in engineered beams, and, so it just takes time to calculate all that, figure it all out. We're trying to do takeoffs off the drawings, which, some of the estimating softwares I've looked at, I can throw the drawings that Chris does, the architectural drawings in, it does the takeoff, and then I can use that to start estimating. I don't know, it just, because we've been doing whole home, Robert, we haven't really focused on like, hey, we build garages. We kind of have been doing everything. So we've got an agent that I know it's going to take a while to bid, because we haven't bid one of these before.
And my feedback is more of a long-term perspective to consider. Sometimes doing what we consider the more basic projects will actually drive higher revenues, higher profits faster to your business, because you're able to become a lot more efficient in churning those out. So that's more of a long-term thing, kind of a new perspective maybe to consider, just for you guys to talk about and think about. So what part of the process is do you feel like it's taking the longest?
Well, for instance, Chris puts out a drawing and it's got, we'll say 30 pages in it with all of the, structural, framing, roofing, electrical, plumbing. And so I have to go in there and we got to pull the takeoff out of all that. So I need to know how much ABS I need. I need to know how much, 14.2, 12.2, 10.3, all of that. So it takes time to go in and pull all of that out of a drawing, and then figure out, the quantities of it, and then the cost of the materials, and then obviously the labor on it. It's time consuming trying to put the whole. So for instance, Robert, we've got about 6,400 square foot barn we're converting to a luxury residence. And we've been working on the bid for 2 months, and we're getting close to being done, but 60 days to put a bid together. And it's grueling because it's a lot of hours we have invested in this thing, and then when you get to the end of this thing, it's like, what if we actually don't get the bid? We've, put on what?
Yeah, I would never do that, by the way, for where you guys are at right now. I would never put 2 months into a bid that you might not win. You're just, if you're at a point where you're comfortable, revenue's coming in the door, if the opportunity misses, it doesn't hit so hard, then yeah, absolutely, that'd be a great project to consider.
Well, right now, and the reason why we did this one is we're the only contractor they're considering for the bid, because their other contractor that they were going to use stopped doing residential, and Chris was the architect on the program, and so they're just waiting for our bid. But it's taken us 2 months to get it together. But you never know until they see the contract. So that's a lot better. So higher likelihood of winning the job. Do
do you guys silo off sections of the estimate? Like when you're going to create it, how do you create it? Like, are you determining, first of all, the materials that are needed, the quantity of the materials, like sectioning off, and we're just going to figure this out, then this, then this?
Yeah, I do. I got like this project's got like 25 tabs for every, everything, the lumber, the plumbing, the electrical, the concrete work, all of that kind of stuff. It's all on an individual tab. Each room has its own tab, the bathroom, the master bathroom and all this, because there's a lot of custom stuff in it. So there's like 25 tabs, and each one of those, they pulled all of the stuff that are on the architectural drawings, and then just start taking the items that need to be in that room one at a time, so nothing gets missed. I mean, there's nothing like missing something on a bid and then being in Jordan's place where you have to get a change order because it was on me, versus the lady walking through the house and going, hey, we want to change this. But I have to go, hey, we need a change order because when I did your bid, I forgot this section.
How do you guys charge customers? Like how do you make like do you do a fixed price? Do you do cost plus?
We're doing 30% markup on materials, and our labor is about a 40% markup.
And that's it?
Yeah. On insurance jobs, we'll do profit and overhead. If we're doing an insurance job, they give us 10% profit, 10% overhead in addition to our billing rate.
Yeah. Yeah. I from what it sounds like to me, it almost sounds like even if you maybe had estimate software, it could make a process go a little bit faster. But when you're bidding these kind of projects, the conversion of a 6,400 square foot barn, especially if it's been utilized as a barn, into a luxury residence, that's a massive I mean, how much is this customer's budget?
Well, we're at about $1.2 million right now with the.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But even a bid that large, $1 million, shouldn't take 2 months to do an estimate. And so
that's what we're saying.
Yeah. And so I think I'm more curious about, the actual process and time that's being spent towards that. Because if this is is this something that you guys are spending 8 hours a day on, 5 days a week?
No. Yeah. No, this is what I do between 6 and 10 or 11 at night.
That's the thing I would say that we need to fix. Doing something like that which requires a lot of focus and mental energy at the end of the day is a pretty tough thing, especially after the end of the day when I know that you've been busy doing a lot, right? You've been up early, you've been working on a number of different projects. So what I think we should do is I think we should talk about this more outside the group call, because we're kind of getting into the weeds of the mechanics here. This is like becoming more of a one-on-one coaching thing, unless anyone else has feedback that they could share.
One other thing, Robert, like he said, it's a 2-month time period, but we have other stuff going on. So it's when we get to it, a couple hours here, a couple hours there. So it's not like we've been working on it full time every day for 2 months.
Yeah.
But another aspect of it is, there's a lot of unknowns still. So we're doing allowances or assumptions on a few things when we need to meet with the client after we get something put on paper to say, all right, this is their allowance for this. There's still a lot of finishes to pick out. There's still plumbing fixtures, all of that stuff that we're just putting it as an allowance. So I guess
one of the things I really like about the cost plus billing model is that there's not so much pressure on the proposal having to be 100% accurate, because that's the final price that you're going to charge a customer. We're really big cost plus people for a number of different reasons, not only for the profitability to earn, but also for the billing that it allows you to do to actually keep you ahead of the money, so that you're not spending money until the customer pays you. throughout the entire project, right? We're not basing it off of a arbitrary percentage. We're basing it off of certain timelines and work that's going to happen in those timelines and collecting before we do that work. And then when the next timeline hits, we're collecting again. So that'd be the only other thing that I'd recommend to consider, especially with these unknowns and assumptions, is we literally, I've had 2 meetings with customers for Power Builders Construction this week, where I have told them, hey, here's the bid that we're looking at. This price point is not the end all be all, this is all we're going to charge you price point. How construction works, regardless of what anyone tells you, is that when you start a job, things change, right? We open up walls and we find out that maybe, there's framing that needs to be replaced that we didn't expect, or you guys want to make a change. And so this is the most accurate price that we can give you based upon what we know. As a cost plus contractor, you're never going to pay more than you have to, because of, these conditions, right? We charge a $90 an hour labor rate. You pay for materials, you pay for subs. We have a contractor fee on top of it. So, that regardless of what happens, you're always going to profit, and there's not such a pressure. You want to give the customer a good indication of, hey, this is where your budget needs to be. But if you have no wiggle room beyond this, right, then it may not be something to consider. But a lot of times what happens to us is that the project comes in much lower than even what our bid says. And if a contractor gives you a fixed price, typically what's going to happen is they're either going to, they could shortchange themselves, right? Or they could, ask you for more money, is what happens a lot of time anyway. So, yeah, I'd love to talk about this more one-on-one, but I think long-term things to consider is, hey, I don't know if there's really a quick way to do these estimates. Other thing is, let's look at what's getting in the way of prioritizing the estimate, right? What activities in your life and your business are going to generate you the most profit? Let's prioritize those, and as much as we can, have everything else come after that, right? Until we win the job during these kind of seasons. And then cost plus doesn't put as much pressure on the estimate needing to be the final price that you'll only end up charging the customer. And there's a way to go about that conversation where the customer understands that cost plus pricing is actually for their benefit, right? It sounds like, oh, well, customers, they always want a fixed price. They always want a fixed number. We have found that if you approach it the right way, that customers are on board with it, that they get where you're coming from, and that they're willing to say, hey, I agree to this pricing model. I agree to the thought that we're only going to pay for the work that we do, and that I'm not going to ever pay more than I have to on this project. I'm only going to be paying for the work and the materials and the subs that are actually utilized on this project. So Bob Stubblefield, I think you brought up a great question here, which is, can you charge for a design agreement that includes an estimate? That's doing this kind of project. I would really encourage you guys to consider that. When it's taking this long, when you're putting this much work in, when there's no guarantee of whether or not you're going to for sure win the estimate, I would almost cover your bases by doing something like Bob said. Bob, do you do that?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm working towards that. I've been doing kind of like Chris and Scott giving estimates, but I'm working towards that. I'm working with a retired contractor who's teaching me a design agreement, and he's also referring me his old plans as he wants to retire, which is a great thing. But he has a background in drawing plans. Chris, did I understand that you draw the plans?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's perfect. That's like my friend Kent. So he has a background in drafting plans. So he enters into a design agreement that's going to include a set of plans, but he doesn't want them to be able to use the plans with another contractor. He puts something in it, his agreement, that it's only for him as a contractor. And then it also includes an estimate and whatever else you guys want to include in there. And then as you're spending 2 or 3 months or whatever, however long it takes you to do your estimate, you're getting paid for that. So you're not just getting paid for your design, for your drawings. You include the estimate. And if you guys show them a spreadsheet, or if you're able to show them stuff as you go, I've had one customer tell me how they love how transparent we are with them, and they're acting like they're locking in with me. But anyway, that's an idea.
You know, that is a really, really good point, because Chris and Scott, you guys have this huge selling point working for you. You have this huge unique value prop that almost all contractors, you know, I would guess that, you know, of these 1,300, 1,600 contractors in your area, you know, less than 5% of them probably have an architect on their team. That's a huge selling point that you could use to actually successfully charge a design agreement that includes an estimate for something like this. Is, hey, one of the great things about working with us, you know, at AZ Renovations, is we have an architect on staff. He does all the drawings. He's trained as an architect. He can do the entire design for you, so that you don't have to hire an external designer. You don't have to hire an architect. And you know that you have the peace of mind that this project is going to be built with skill and precision, so that you can have all the plans and the entire layout and design before we even start construction. You're going to know everything that happens. So that's a strong selling point. That's something that most people won't be able to compete with if you guys position yourselves to actually use that selling point.
Also, during this process, as you draw the plans and as you create your estimate, you guys can massage the estimate, and the customer can pull back on their budget, or if they have extra money, they can add things. So that's a great time to change the budget.
Well, there's a lot of aspects in the design. So when I initially get the project, I pitch that we're a design build, you know, we can do everything in-house. So that's a good selling point, as you say. But when I'm designing the plans, I do have, you know, I always try to ask for a budget. All right, do you want me to value engineer this, or do you don't care, you just want nice stuff? You want what you want and you don't care what it costs. So I kind of get the feel for that. But at the same time, after I produce the plan set, they're free to go get other estimates. So it's not like, okay, I designed the plans, you know, we're the only ones that are going to be able to build it. I can't lock them into that. I do say we can provide you an estimate as well, but they'll probably go out or they already have a contractor on board that they worked with before, or their brother-in-law or whoever it is. So I only get the design portion of it. So it just depends, I guess, on the situation. And
do you charge for that?
For what?
The design portion of it. If someone's saying okay.
That's a separate fee proposal I provide. Here's the engineering. Here's what it's going to cost to go to the city to get the permit. You know, I kind of lay all that out in my fee proposal, which is separate than our construction bid. So
good.
If I can get my foot in the door to get the construction, yeah, okay, we want a bid from you guys. Go ahead and give us a bid. That'll be a separate, I guess, fee proposal or estimate. But there are people out here that do charge for giving estimates. And I believe I had a client, I think they told me that the contractor gave them a fee of $10,000 to give them a construction estimate. It was a pretty decent sized job. And they were like, no way, you know, we're not going to do that. So that kind of turns a lot of clients off when you want to charge for an estimate, because there are a lot of
Well,
contractors.
$10,000 is a lot more than
Yeah.
what's normal.
Yeah,
That's a little extreme.
it was like, what?
So a lot of our clients do charge for estimates, and it's not something you have to do all the time, but it's something if you're in a season where you've got a lot of leads coming in, you got a lot of work on the board, and you want to make sure that people have skin in the game, charging for estimate is huge. Or giving a perimeter, like a rough estimate, and then saying, hey, if you are interested, if you're wanting to look forward, here's our $200 estimate fee. That's going to allow us to get detailed in your design, come back to you with a very exact number and scope, just so that you're not wasting your time.
I want to go to Philip, but the kind of final idea I have, Scott, is it's really hard to grow a construction business that's taking on projects of this capacity on a part-time timeline. I just don't know if the only time that you can work on this stuff is at night. I kind of get that season, but in order to do projects of this size, it's almost like it's like a full-time requirement. And so I know that's a bigger conversation, right? But just something to think about. I just don't know if there's a fast way to do this when you're only giving yourself a few hours at the end of the day to put a scope together of this size. So Philip, though, I want to hear what you have to say, man.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking about, the design build side of things, and how, one of the guys was talking about how he designs it, but he doesn't always get the job. We kind of never really have the conversation like, hey, we can give you a bid. We just say we are going to give you a bid. It's kind of built into our design proposal. So like we say, hey, this is how much it's going to cost to do all the design, and we include a free estimate built into that, and we carry some fees, hidden fees in the design proposal to cover some of that time for the estimate, and then we present that, and I'd say maybe 25% of our clients actually go and get another bid, but time and time again, I'd say if we're doing the design, 95% of the time we're going to build it, because we kind of advertise that, hey, one-stop shop, you trust us, you like us, we're going to get the job done right from the get-go. You've seen how we've done the design. It's going to be the same thing in construction. And we've actually had clients say, hey, like we had other guys come in and bid this, and you were actually higher, and we went with you instead because we saw the value in what you guys do.
Yeah, there's a lot of value in that, in pitching it that way. And I think if you are getting that close to the customer and doing that much for them, you should win the job most of the time.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, this condominium we're talking about, I have a good relationship with the client. I did, before we even, like Scott said, a previous contractor I work with who got out of residential. He's just tired of dealing with clients and change orders and that whole thing Jordan was dealing with. So he's strictly commercial. So he forwards us all of his residential stuff. So this was kind of one of those where he brought me in. He was going to do the build out in the middle of design. This is when he decided to go strictly commercial. So we took it on. I have a good relationship with them. They already had a couple other contractors come in and kind of give them estimates based on a first submittal set or something I had initially given them. And their numbers were way off. I mean, some guy, one of them bid like 600,000. There's no way that's going to be where, here's $400,000 worth of change orders,
Yeah, exactly.
So I have a good relationship. They know they've stated that they want to use us because they know our integrity and in our work, the design build process, that whole thing. So that relationship is established, and that's important. So I think that's a good point, that we can include it all in one, build that relationship, give them the estimate. And even if we're higher, and they know, I've already stated, we're going to be higher than some of those other estimates. And they're like, okay, well, we don't want to cut corners. We don't want to skimp. We want it done right. And we trust you. So This is the reason we're putting the time into the estimate, because they've already stated that they're really interested in using us.
Arnold's Plumbing said, "Glad I'm a plumber, y'all." LOL.
He needed that. This week.
Yeah, plumbers have their own fair share of challenges too that are unique, man.
Yeah.
I think depending upon the situation, remodelers and general contractors say that about the trades, and then it goes the other way in certain situations too. But I get it. Yeah, I think there was a lot of good feedback here. Yeah, would love to maybe break this down further with you guys individually. But just I think something to think about is, I just, again, don't know if there's a way to go about this faster, even with additional software on a kind of a part-time effort, right? I know, and it's not a reflection of your guys' overall effort in life. It's just the prioritization of just if you only give this thing 3-4 hours a day, a few days a week. That's just for a project of this size. There's objectively it's going to take a long time.
Well, Nicole is helping us doing some onboarding. So hopefully we'll have some back end people that can take some tasks off, so we can be more focused on the important. So
yeah, that's something. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily recommend, but there's also people that you can find to estimate certain parts of a project of this size too, who do this full time. And again, that's not typically a route I recommend, because that's a whole nother kind of can of worms, but there's a few other solutions I think we can look into. So, okay, well, we're about out of time. Appreciate the feedback. So good to see everybody. Let's go Thunder up, right? Lost last night. It was tough, man. It was tough. Anyway, all right, everybody, have a great rest of the week. Great weekend.
Bye, guys.